everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this week's podcast episode of FastForward U presents Start Here. I'm your host, or one of your hosts, Carrie Ingram here, and I am just going to give you yet another quick intro to today's podcast video, since this is another one of our interviews that Kevin Carter formerly did with some founders. In today's video, we are talking to Elliot Kim, who is one of three brothers who decided to go into entrepreneurship through a backpack company. As before, I'm not even going to spoil anymore. If you guys want to know more about this founder, about their journey, about their startup, then just keep on listening to the conversation that they had with Kevin Carter this past semester at FastForward U, and sit back, take some notes, get some inspiration, and enjoy this week's episode. Here we go. Super quick intro, down.
We have a treat today because we have Elliot Kim, who is a co-founder and one of the three brother co-founders of Brevite. And I'm really excited to introduce him because there's a great story to be told. Elliot graduated from Hopkins about 5 years ago and has worn many hats since then. I remember when you were in college, you were interning in politics. After graduation, worked in finance, but his life took a bit of a turn when his brother Dylan needed a camera backpack he could use while traveling. But none of the models he could find turned out to be what he was looking for. So his other brother, Brandon, who's a designer, decided to make him one. So they grabbed a sewing machine and some raw materials and stitched up the first ever Brevite backpack, which was designed with comfort and portability in mind. Now enter Elliot into the mix with his foundation in finance and operations, and Brevite was officially born. So in those last 5 years, Brevite's blossomed into a multi-million-dollar company with an ever-expanding product line that photographers and lay people alike love. So the Kim brothers have received quite a bit of recognition, well-earned recognition for their company and their products, most recently earning a nod as Forbes 30 Under 30. So please give a large off-mute welcome to Elliot Kim. Yeah.
Welcome.
It's pulling teeth. It's pulling teeth.
Welcome to the Zoom world, right?
It's all right. We're 11 months in. I get the fatigue. So like I said, I'm really excited to welcome you here because I think I always enjoy talking to entrepreneurs that seem like they have a little bit of a non-traditional background for getting into entrepreneurship. And I would say, you know, you're in college, you're interning with DePaul Patrick in Massachusetts, you're interning at the White House, and then after college, you work at the Fed Reserve in New York. It's not typically the path people might think, like, oh, I'm going to start a D2C retail e-commerce company with my brothers. So I'm just curious, what type of entrepreneurial experience did you have before the founding of Brevite, or did you always have the itch to start something?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started in college. Technically, it was like a side project through a lot of college. That Brandon and Dylan. So Brandon is an older brother, a year older than me, and then Dylan's my twin brother. And so Brandon is, he's our head of design. Dylan's our head of marketing / he's a photographer as well. So that's kind of where it started. And then I'm our head of finance and operations. And so there was a good mix, like for what we were all interested in to, I guess, run a company, especially on the product side, a product focused company. But I would say, like, going back, Brandon and Dylan really thought of this idea. Dylan wanted a backpack that could suit his needs, and then Brandon was trying to get into design school to go to industrial design, and so it really worked out well. So it was like a good time for us to just do this on the side. But based on my past experience, again, we didn't really have any prior. We had as much experience as any college student, so my interests were not in starting a company at this time, and like I didn't foresee like a backpack venture being like my first venture in entrepreneurship. I was like, oh, there's a lot of backpack companies, like probably don't need another backpack company, but it kind of just like kept on going. So that was 2015, and then fast forward 3 years, I graduated 2016 and then been working at the New York Fed for 2 years. And so 2016 to 2018, it was just a side project. It was just growing organically for like 2 or 3 years. And because of that, we were able to just bootstrap it. We didn't raise any money from investors. We got some grant money from our universities, Johns Hopkins included, which was awesome. But yeah, through that whole process and just growing it organically, we were able to get good momentum, get a foundation. And then, we all relocated to Brooklyn in 2018. And so for the past like 2.5 years, we've just been trying to scale the company.
Awesome. Let's take it back to the very first backpack ever made, though, because it seemed like it was more out of just necessity or Dylan not being able to find what he needs. And as a side note, Dylan's a fantastic photographer. We're both in Venture for America, and some of my favorite pictures are Dylan taking me at Philly Formal. So some really good high quality need there for that. But how did he discover, like, what gap was there in backpack market? You would assume that's something that's been pretty well covered.
Yeah.
What was he looking for that he couldn't quite find?
So for context, we started as and we still have a big market share in the photography market. We've since been expanding to become like a more everyday backpack company. But back when we started in 2015, we noticed that there was just a lot of ugly camera bags out there, very plain looking. And so we wanted to just give a more traditional like school bag style. So think of like a JanSport bag, give that more traditional look to what a camera bag is. And so that's where they hit the ground running. There was like a removable insert, so it could become like a everyday bag from a camera bag. And so it was like a perfect backpack for a student photographer. And that's what we launched with. And we launched on Kickstarter. We raised, close to 40,000. And, that was before we even knew what like, Facebook ads or paid media or anything was. We just like launched the product, started an Instagram for it. And then just like organically that's what the market wanted at that time. And so, over the past 6 years now, we still iterated that product. And one of our best-selling products is an iteration of our first backpack, which we look at now. We're like, wow, that thing is crazy, ugly. It was not pretty. Looking at it now, but I think that's just like a good to just like if you're going to start something, just like get something off the ground, put something out in the market, and start. It doesn't have to be the prettiest thing.
Yeah,
and it can always just transform into something prettier.
I think it was Reid Hoffman or somewhere of that sphere. It said something about if you're not ashamed of the first product you ever put out, you waited too long. And that always kind of stuck with me, is that you need to put it out and get that feedback. More than just your inner circle, but to the wide world. And I'm sure there's no more public of a launch than going on Kickstarter, where it's not just you failing in private. It's you, if you were to fail, which you didn't, obviously you had about 38K and 138 backers. So successful campaign by all metrics. But for context, we have some students here, some ventures that I think would make for very good Kickstarter campaigns. They have really cool physical products that they're looking to launch to market. What would you say made your Kickstarter campaign so successful?
I think find a product that people want. I think is the most important. So we always say, obsess over product and just, prioritize your product. If you bring a good product to Kickstarter, you should be able to get funded and funded in a reasonable amount. Like $40,000 to us back then was the amount that we needed to order, I think 500 bags and just get the thing going. So it's a super good venue. I think, it's best served for people who are actually, looking to just like get some early stage financing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did see that you did run another campaign, I think in 2018, the Featherlight backpack, that also seemed to kind of have a mirror level of success, and you hit your goal and you're able to launch that. Was there anything you learned from your first campaign that you incorporated in the second? Sounds like it wasn't as crazy difficult as you might expect, but like anything you learned that helped it or made it a little bit easier going forward?
I'm glad you brought that up. That campaign was a flop actually. And so really? That product was a flop and that campaign was a flop. Yeah. So that, it's funny that you say that. I haven't reflected on that in a long time, but I think we had just started to come on. I think, we were starting to come on full time at that point. And, we had just wrapped up that campaign, and we thought, our brand was growing 3 years, and we would come back and launch this campaign and we would have to do nothing and it would be bigger than the first one. And so 3 years had gone by. Kickstarter had changed a lot. A lot more bag companies had gone on Kickstarter. And then, we thought we wouldn't have to like drive any traffic to it. It would just, raise $100,000 or more dollars. And I think it raised less than the first one. It raised like 30,000 or 30, was it 33,000 you said? Something like that?
Yeah, low 30s.
Yeah. And so that was just like a rude awakening for us. And I think we did end up at the end, we were trying to spend money to get people onto that site. So we probably sunk like, we probably lost money on that whole campaign, net. So it's just funny to think back. Things change, and like, just because you do something well the first time does not mean it'll go well the second time.
That is a really good point. Yeah, and Kickstarter, I think people don't realize can be really pricey. You don't net 30K if you raise 30K. You end up having to pay fulfillment, you pay a lot of fees to Kickstarter, and then, I mean, you might only end up with a slim portion of that. But it is a good way to get public traction at times too. So just
Yeah, no,
depending.
if anybody wants to chat about it, we know a lot of people who have run, super successful Kickstarters. So definitely consider it if you're a product company.
I'm really curious too about your just e-commerce presence in general, because it's really impressive. Even before I was doing more research into this, I get targeted by Brevity ads all the time. And I'm like, not a huge photographer, but I follow the Instagram account, and it's ever present, which is just really impressive. So again, for all of our people that are doing B2C sales here and looking to launch e-commerce companies, this might be a little bit more of Dylan's realm, but what tips or tricks do you have from your experience on Brevity that can help people really take full advantage of the social media marketing?
Social media is obviously a super powerful tool. From the paid side and just the organic side, I think it's a great reflection, and just like completely democratize how you can present your brand. And so we've invested in that from the beginning, and not only just invested in our social media presence, but like we've always leaned on our customers. And so I always say that we have like the best of both worlds. So like our customer is a photographer, so like naturally they're just going to produce a really good picture or image. And so like social media has been easier for us in some ways, but we never discounted the power of that. And then the flip side to that, I would just say like, Facebook and Instagram as a channel for marketing is obviously an exceptionally good marketing channel. And so, we're not venture backed, so we didn't just go and like try to blitz scale the market and try to just like spend like crazy, but we've over the years continued to just like really understand how our digital marketing mix works. And so we've been able to just, continue to scale that up over the years, and it's become, we're profitable. And, we try to watch that channel really carefully. But it can become, a big channel. It drives the majority of our revenue still. So yeah, we just, count that as like a viable channel, and one that we see being viable for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, one thing that always just stood out to me too is sometimes I won't get an ad from Brevity, the account, but I'll get an ad from either an influencer or someone that loves your product and is doing some kind of sponsored post, or they're like, oh, I took my Brevity going backpacking in South America and it was perfect, right?
Yeah.
You just have a large number of influencers. I'm curious how much of that is organic, of people that just like you don't know at all that have bought a backpack and they're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take a picture, tag me, and like send it to you, versus is there any kind of strategic outreach you've done with people in this space to really spread the word about Brevity?
So I think word of mouth marketing is, they always say is like the best form of marketing. And so, from our recent product, like, it's funny, some of our more recent products sell at a rate of like 10x what our first products were selling at. And so iterating, not answering your question directly yet, but iterating on kind of what your product is, listen to your customer. I think, just because you don't get it right the first time doesn't mean you can't get it right the next time or the third time. We had that Kickstarter flop, which is like a kind of like a product flop in between then. So, keep working at it, listening to your customer. And then, in terms of how we're actually like getting our product out there, yeah, we lean on our customers, but we also do lean on a lot of influencers. And I think influencer marketing has changed a lot over the past 5 years, right? Like before, every influencer wanted product. They would like give you a post for it. And then now it's like not so much like that. Like people want to get paid and stuff. And so we do seed our products to a lot of influencers, and we still like don't completely believe in, I shouldn't say we don't believe in paying people, but we send influencers products, and we want them to love the product for what it is, and we'll do other things. So instead of like paying them, we'll give them the product, and then they'll do this thing called whitelisting, where we'll pump ad dollars into their account to promote our product. And so they're getting a lot of visibility to their account, getting more followers, and then we're also they're serving as like a testimonial for us. So I think there's like ways that marketing has changed. Instead of just like an influencer posts a photo of your bag or your product, which existed like 3 to 5 years ago, but now it's not as, there's just more unique ways to do things now, I would say.
Interesting. That would explain it. I never heard of the term whitelisting before, but it seems like a win-win, right? Where it's not like you're constantly bombarding people with your direct company, but it's just like a chance, a mutual opportunity for them to grow, but also promote a product that ideally they truly appreciate and have found helpful.
Yeah, and we find that it's like as a channel, it's stickier. Like people, for example, like Instagram, you post a photo and then somebody scrolls through it or a story and like it's gone. Person's never going to see that again. You never revisit somebody's posts. And so, we wanted stickier ways, and, whitelisting, like YouTube is a great example of like a stickier way. People go, they search for a review of the product, like they watch that video lives forever. So if somebody searches your product on YouTube, they can, always find that. But, on Instagram, that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. So last thing on social media marketing, it seems like you've really crafted a pretty tried and true brand with Brevite. I think people know what they get when they're getting a Brevite backpack. People, I think just everything's very clean, sleek, and just consistent, I think is one of the biggest words for it. What advice do you have for an up and coming D2C or e-commerce company that is trying to build a brand? How do you build that consistency and authenticity?
Yeah, so I would say it depends how you're, whether you raise money or not from investors. I would say, invest in your product, get to know your customer really well and give them exactly what they want. And then I would say just try to provide the best customer experience you can. And that's a quality product. That's like, not cheaping out in, areas that, are never going to make them come back to you. And so those are things that we really try to obsess over. It's like, how can the customer come to Brevite and, be guaranteed that they're going to feel good about their purchase? I think that's one. And then I would say too, is just like, stay at it. Like we've been doing this for 6 years now, and we're finally starting to see some really solid traction over the past like year and a half, I would say. But sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, time goes by really fast. Can't believe I graduated 5 years ago now, but just stay at it and stay consistent. It's funny, like we've had team meetings, and, before we even had a team, it was just my brothers and me. And, we did that every single week. Sometimes we'd have nothing to talk about because it'd be like we were sending out one bag to some influencer or something like that. But we were just consistent. We posted on social media every day, even if we didn't have like great content to post back in the day. But I think things just continue to snowball. And then I would say like the third piece of advice I have is just focusing on, your foundation. And so as a first-time founder ourselves, and I imagine a lot of you guys are, it's like, you don't have a ton of experience. Like you're not coming in with 20 years of industry experience. Like it's a huge learning curve. And if you can raise a ton of money and be successful, like that's super awesome. But for us, we didn't raise any money, and we were able to just like, brick by brick, build a foundation for the company and learn a ton in the process and make a lot of mistakes. And they weren't like super catastrophic, because we were just managing that risk the entire time. So I would just say like, also try to build a good foundation for the business, kind of, in a way that suits your current experience or skill set.
Yeah, that mirrors a lot of what you said. And I sent this article out to the students ahead of time of what you said, why we decided not to pursue VC money, quote, for now. And I was just curious if you could, you did touch on it a bit, but what the considerations were in both aspects. I'm sure you could be a venture backable company if you chose to go that route. I'm sure there might have even been offers, but I'm curious about why you decided to go that route and whether or not anything has changed since you wrote that article.
Yeah, so that's a great question. In 2018, when we came on full time, we got a tiny office in Brooklyn at that time, and we were like, oh, let's go out and raise some money. And I think, we had gotten some soft commitments, and then we were just, realizing what our valuation would be for what we would get. And so we had some traction. We didn't really know where we were going because we had just come together at that point. And so we didn't have this grand vision for the company at the time. And so, we realized that for what we would raise, may not have been worth it. Maybe we would have had a few $100,000 and a low valuation. So, if we couldn't justify it for ourselves, how are we going to justify that to investors? And so over the past 2 years, we've really been able to refine our vision, where we're going as a company, and then also just continue to grow. And so, we wanted to, if we're going to raise money, do it on our terms and not the terms of investors. And I think, if you're not, if you don't have enough traction, sometimes that can't be the case. You just have to do, what the investors want. And so, we've had investors continue to be interested since 2018 and more so than ever now. So we're never counting out doing that, but for now it's something that we're profitable, as I mentioned. So I think we'll continue to just be bootstrapped for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's always nice to be in a place where you don't need to raise money. I think there's so many startups that VC is their Hail Mary, or like they depend on it and they can't find product market fit, or they can't get their first customers without trying to get it. And that just puts them in such a hard position because, like you said, if VCs know you're desperate, they're not your friend. They can be helpful, but I mean, at the same time, they're out to make money. And if they know that you need their money or you go belly up, you might take unfavorable terms. So I think it's always good to come from a position of power.
I think back to like almost 3 years ago now, say we had raised, a small sum. I think we would have had a tough time figuring out how to effectively or efficiently, I should say, spend that. We didn't know where the business was going. Like we didn't know exactly, we didn't have, as I mentioned, this grand vision of what we wanted. So, I think it would have been a disaster for the direction of the team.
Great. So let's talk about the team, because I'm not as familiar. I know the three Kim brothers, but I'm curious about how has the team grown since you first started out, had the first successful Kickstarter launch? You said you had that office in Brooklyn. How have you grown? And you specifically, Elliot, how's your day-to-day changed since starting out now?
Yeah, so I think over the past 6 months, we've been trying to hire more. We've hired a few people on the marketing team. Then we're looking to now bring somebody in more on the operations side, and then get more people on the senior, more senior marketers onboarded. So the team, we've grown. I think something we've always tried to maintain is as a bootstrap company, trying to maintain a really tight knit team. A team that can, ebb and not become so big that if things hit the fan with us, that we would be kind of up the creek. And so that's something we've been really cognizant of. We've been growing. If anybody knows anybody good, let me know.
What are you looking for specifically? Shoot your shot.
We're hiring. So we're trying to hire a head of growth right now. Somebody who would own, most of the kind of the growth channels for the business. And so that would help offload a lot of what Dylan's doing to focus on some longer term strategic marketing. And then trying to hire a chief of staff to take over more day-to-day operations. And so with that, I would say, where I see our role or my role is we've been so in the weeds for so long, and I think 5 or 6 years now. And so now as founders and just day-to-day operators, trying to elevate ourselves to think more about kind of the long-term strategy of the company. So I know all of you guys on here probably understand what it's like to just be grinding away every day to get something through. And that's still a lot of what my day-to-day is. So trying to pull back from that.
Yeah, well, it's fun to have growth to manage, right? So I think that's something that's been huge for you in the last year and a half or so. And I think a lot of it, from my point of view, the outside point of view, has come from diversifying your product line. You're no longer just the camera backpack. Now you have a whole everyday backpack line. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to realize it's time to, hey, if we want to keep growing or grow faster, we need to diversify what we actually offer?
Yeah, it felt like a very natural progression. We always wanted to be so many of I'm not a photographer, so many of our friends were always like, oh, can I buy one of your bags? And we're like, yeah, you can, but it's for a photographer. And so we always wanted to just be a super friendly and inclusive company, and a company that our friends could buy from and feel confident and comfortable buying from at a fair price. And so that's where the real natural progression, I think, formed. And then, obviously it's a way bigger market opportunity, the everyday person, you can target students, people going to work, et cetera, et cetera. whereas, the camera market is more of a niche market. But the camera market gave us a really good opportunity to learn how to make like a solid backpack. So, most people would be like, oh, we're going to start a backpack company, and then maybe in a few years we'll make a camera bag. But we did the opposite. And so the camera consumer is like super particular because they have really expensive equipment. And so we just learned to make a quality product. And I think that's served us well going into the everyday market, to continue to make a better product.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I always tell students, start in your niche. You shouldn't launch with 10 products, right? Launch with what you know and what you're really good at. And then, with the success comes the growth. And I think it seems like you've done
we had
really
like one or two backpacks for like, 3 years or something.
So I'm curious, what is Brevity's system for getting feedback from customers and consumers on the backpacks? And to follow up on that, is there any kind of feedback you've received that you're like, oh man, we should include that, or we should change a feature because of what your consumers are telling you?
Oh yeah, we're always getting good feedback. I think it's important. So we used to, we have a customer support team now, but before that, it was always, it's me a lot working in the customer service or customer support side, along with my brothers. But I think it's really important to be always talking to your customers. And so, once a quarter, I always try to spend a week, just getting involved with what the customer support team is. So I put on a customer service hat and I just talk to our customers and I hear what their issues are. And then encouraging our customer support team to just tell us when there's issues. But, like over Christmas or over the holiday break, through Christmas, the team took that week off. So that was a great opportunity for me to just do customer support that entire week. And I learned so many things. I was like, your customer support team, sometimes forgets to tell you things because that's just their day to day, but you just learn a ton, and customers are super vocal, as most people know. So they'll always tell you what the problem is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I think I was listening to How I Built This with the Warby Parker co-founders, and they were talking about the same thing where they ran their own customers. So they had like a Google line they set up between them that would, like, if that line was ringing, it was customer support, and then they just set it up between the four of them for like over a year, just so like they were seeing firsthand what these problems were with the glasses or with the whole process, as opposed to
it's really
trying to rush to outsource something right away.
No, it can be really easy to disconnect from your customers, and you want, like, sometimes you're like, it's kind of anxiety provoking when your customers are reaching out to you, so you just want to like put that on somebody else. But it's really important to just say, I'm gonna hear them out.
There's the old adage in saying you shouldn't go into business with like family or friends. So like, and here you are having successfully scaled a company with your two brothers. Did you ever have any apprehension about going into business with your brothers?
It's fun. Somebody asked me that question recently, and I was like, they're like, what's it like working with your siblings? And I was like, what's it like, or starting a company with your siblings? And then I was like, well, what's it like not starting a company with your siblings? Because now that's all I've ever. What's up?
Yeah, it's what you know.
Yeah, it's what I know. So it feels super natural, and we get along really, really well. And I think we do a good job separating, work and not work. And so we hang out, outside of work too, and we're able to separate those nicely. But I think in the early days, yeah, like when Brevity was really, I'll say it, Brevity was really ugly in the early days. Like I was not a fan of our product. I was not a fan of where we were. Like, I felt like I was on a good career path otherwise. And so, it took me, it kind of took like a lot of nerve to just like continue on and say like, let's see if we can make a go of this thing. But part of me was like, this is the honest truth, is like, I had felt like it got to a point where it was like so big that I needed to like, and it was so big and getting so messy. And now my name was attached to it. I was like, all right, it's time to like go in and clean this thing up and like make this thing beautiful. And so, it's just, there's always a little bit of doubt in the early days, but that's just part of the process.
Nice. That's good advice. So what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing right now with Brevity, and how are you going about trying to solve it?
I think for us, figuring out how to hire a good team is a big challenge. Every hire feels like it's so important. With that, managing a good team and making a good culture, I think in the virtual world is challenging. You're so used to, as a founder, just like, going really hard all the time, and you don't want to, put that same, you don't want that to be the culture of your team. You want people to work hard, but you don't want people to think that like they need to work themselves into the ground. And then I would also say, just trying to, diversify our sales channels. And so, you build up certain channels to make a ton of money, but you want to make sure that you can weather the good times and the bad times. So I think COVID taught everybody, that, nothing is certain and things can change really fast. So yeah, that's what we've been kind of battling with recently.
So I wasn't originally going to ask this, but I'm just curious about the sales channel components. I imagine Instagram is probably your biggest funnel by far. What's the second, or like what's like the most innovative like funnel that you're trying to tap into to get more from that?
Yeah, I mean, we have affiliates, a pretty big sales channel for us. So like, people finding us through like affiliate, press, or like, YouTube, things like that. I would say affiliate something we're trying to grow to become even bigger. And so, we're not scared of Facebook as a channel, as I kind of mentioned earlier. We think it's here to stay. But just making sure that the business is ready for the ups and downs, because yeah, I mean, when you're just spending, huge dollars on that, if you're not ready to weather the downturns, I think that's where people get stuck. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I got one more.
Yeah.
So, and on a wholesome note, what are you proudest of so far when you're talking about Brevity?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'm most proud of the integrity that as brothers we've maintained through this whole thing. And so, we value our people, we value our customers. And so now we're trying, this past year we donated $150,000 of backpacks to the homeless in New York. And so that was something our team loved, and something our customers loved. And so now we're trying to roll out like a bigger donation strategy. And so we're considering like a 1-for-1 donation. So you buy a bag and you give a bag. And then so in even cooler than that, we didn't want to just create unnecessary waste in the world by making more bags. So, we talked to our suppliers and they can actually, upcycle, so they can use material that was going to be thrown away at our factories or our suppliers, and they can make those into products that can be donated. So yeah, I think that's what I'm definitely most proud of, that we always wanted to be more than just backpacks. And so I feel like now we're finally able to carry that out.
Yeah, you're well on your way. Well, that's awesome. And that is a great note to end on.
All right, guys, that was this week's FFU Presents Start Here podcast episode. Like I said before, we're going to be doing the next few episodes with previously recorded material through our Zoom meetings we had with our Fuel cohort for spring 2021. So these interviews will always feature Kevin Carter as the interviewer, and very quick intros and outros by yours truly. But we hope that you enjoy each and one of these episodes and that you get some nice bits of information, tips, tricks, and inspiration for your own entrepreneurial and startup journey. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you next time, and take care, I guess. Bye, guys.